Welcome to the third video of Sacrifice. Today we will be talking about some of the classical ways for you to sacrifice. And this is very good for players in the single digit queue as well as low to middle down level players, because these shapes happen a lot in your actual games. Well, first solve the problem on the top left. It is black's turn. Now, from the first glance, we can see that this group is kind of weak here. It has two cutting points, and the shape just looks very loose, right? There's a lot of ways for white to exploit this shape. Now, this is black's turn, and black needs to figure out how to sacrifice. The first intuition is for us to block here, and then white is going to turn. Black gets a sente, but the problem is that the cutting points still exist. And the more serious problem is that there's no very good way for black to fix this. The best is probably play the tiger's mouth. Later on, there's still like this cutting point here. And black does not look completely alive. Right? It is safe temporarily, but as the game progresses, you might have problems live in this group at some point. So in that case, we can think about sacrifice. We have a dead stone already, so we will play another stone to even sacrifice more. So white has no choice but to turn here, and then black is going to block over here. Now this looks terrible for black, right? Because white has a double Atari. Usually a double Atari cannot be allowed, but with this specific shape, black can just connect. And when white captures, black can just Atari like this. Now, white cannot connect anymore because white has only two liberties and has to go back. Black captures, and then white Ataris at c18. We can see with this variation, black is able to gain a sente, first of all, and also black is extremely thick on the outside. Right? So black's group has no weakness, and this is a fantastic outcome because we were willing to sacrifice an extra stone over here. And all this sequence is pretty forcing. White doesn't really have a choice. White can Tanuki now if he doesn't really like the sequence, but I mean, if you just play something else and black captures, this is quite a lot of territory as well. So that would be the answer for the question on top left. It shows you that a lot of times we can drag out we can increase the size of our debt group to gain more profits on the outside, right? This is a fundamental idea when it comes to sacrifice. And this is pretty much the idea for the third video of sacrifice. And I think it is definitely something that single digit Q level players should master if you want to become a down level player. It's just such a fundamental, crucial idea. So we'll see a couple more examples by solving these problems. Okay, so now let's look at the problem over here. So it's white's turn. White decided to turn over here, right? It's an obvious move, right? Otherwise, black is gonna Atari and then capture white. So when white turns here, our intuition is telling us to block here, right? This is the most intuitive move. And then white is going to extend a little further. And now black can block here. That's no problem. But this is a gote, right? The only bad thing about this block is it's a gote. So black's in an awkward situation. He has to spend an extra move to seriously, claim this as territory, or he needs the Tanuki. But the problem with Tanuki is that, there's later on this jump here that's going to destroy the territory over here. So that's where we need to think about sacrifice. And the correct move for black to play here is to play the second line haunting. Now, against this move, first of all, white cannot connect here, right? If you connect, black can just play out this block here. Maybe white has Sente, but this is way too painful, right? Black was able to block the entire thing. And later on, this is a Sente. White has to block because of life and death issues. And this is just too much for white, for black. So white can think about this Atari, but then when black Ataris, white captures, black was able to seal this place in Sente, right? So that's a move, one move difference. Against this move, white's correct move is to turn here, and black now has a driving sequence. White is forced to descend, and then we can block here. And white has to spend an extra move because of the Atari here, so white has to capture. So from the sacrifice, we originally had one dead stone, now we have two. It's true that white gained some extra territory in the corner, but black was able to seal the entire area with a Sente. Now this is black's turn, black can play on the outside. So once again, to emphasize our idea, a lot of times when you have a dead stone, you want to make it increase. You want to be, have two dead stones, right? Why not? And then you can gain more profits from the outside. Let's now look at another idea by solving the problem on the bottom right. It's black's turn again. And now black needs to exploit a problem that white has here, right? White has two cutting point. And none of the cutting point is really going to do fatal damage, right? Let's say, for example, you cut here, white can capture. And that's just a terrible move because you just sacrificed this stone. If you cut over here, then white can connect, and there's no serious damage that black can do. Regardless, black should choose one side to cut. And the side to cut is definitely on the O2 side because white must save the stones in the corner. So the rule that you should remember when you choose a cutting point is to choose on the side is to not choose on the side that your enemy or your opponent must protect, I would say, right? So if white has to protect the two stones in the corner, what do I mean by that? So if I cut here, there's no way white can capture us here because we can take the entire corner, and this is way too big. So when white must save these two stones, we should cut on the other side, but not on this side. Because the reason is obvious, right? White has to defend this side anyway, so why would we make our stone suicide like this, right? So the correct way for us to exploit this weakness is to cut over here. White now has to connect to protect the corner. Now this is where our sacrifice will come into play, right? If we just block on top, white has many ways to deal with this. White can simply turn and capture, and now black has a strong side, but there's still a leak over here, right? Later on, white is able to play here, and the territory here is destroyed. White can also extend, and if black blocks, then white has the Sente, so white can now play somewhere else, right? This is not, white can ignore this part for now. So the correct move is for us to think about how we can sacrifice more, right? We already have a dead stone. Let's now drive white out by sacrificing even more. White has to extend, and here you'd be tempted to just block here, right? Even I think the middle Dan level player would just be like, oh wow, that's such a nice time to just block here, and then block again, and now we have everything sealed inside because white cannot counterattack. The problem with this is black got a Gote, right? So it is true that white cannot struggle here, But white can just play out something else. And then you play here, I play here. White is fine. What if we have a solution that gives us the Sente, but in the meantime completely seals white inside? And then we have to apply the same principle once again by playing the crawl here, right? We originally had one dead stone, but now we have 3. And that's how brilliant this idea is. White has to come out, and then black plays out the K3. White turns, and black blocks over here. Now, it is very useless for white to struggle to come out here, because white cannot do that, right? If you play here, I can Hane. Atari, I can connect. Atari, I can play this. You connect, I can turn here. And then finally, I can enclose white inside. So this struggle only makes black a lot thicker than before, right? So the struggle is completely useless. Now white cannot push anymore, right? Because of the liberty. So after these exchanges, we can see that black's influence is so much stronger than if white did not struggle at all. So correct move is for white to just come back and capture black, squeeze from the outside, and then capture the stones here. So by sacrificing our 3 stones here, we were able to completely seal white on both sides. And now look, this is black's turn, right? Black can play whatever he wants and expand himself. So very nice sequence for sacrificing. So instead of thinking about sacrificing 2, we apply the same principle once again to sacrifice 3. And then the more we sacrifice here, the better it gets. But of course, all of this comes with reading, right? You might be like, oh, well, how about sacrificing 4? Well, that's more called suiciding with 4, because now when white extends out, everything is broken, right? So you have to stop here, not sacrificing 4 stones. And that comes with a bit of common sense in reading, right? Because obviously, if white pierces through like this, that's over. All right, so that is the problem that we solved with the bottom right corner. And finally, we will talk about a little bit about an endgame sacrifice. So white's group here is completely safe. There's no problem. Now we have to apply the same principle. If you apply the same principle that I just talked about, in terms of cutting, you will know that black should definitely cut at b6, but not at b8, because white will simply capture, and that's just useless suiciding stone here. So, well, the reason white must save these 2 guys is because let's say he doesn't, right? Let's say this happens. Black can just drag the stone out, and then white's just in trouble, right? Like this. In our situation, white is in trouble. But let's say for example, black cannot drag this out. Black also has very severe sequence. Like black can attach. Right? Let's assume for one moment that these stones don't exist at all. Black can attach. White cannot turn. White can only turn down, and then black can cap white inside. So that's also very serious. That's why you don't want to capture inside. You want to connect solid to make sure you have a say of the outside. So now you might be wondering, well, what's the deal here, right? Like, there's nothing I can do here, right? If I play this, it's a gote, right? White does not have to answer. Now, the most common idea is for black to connect here, and now black is all solid on the outside. It is a very comfortable move, except when white crawls here. This becomes a bit of a problem, because if black blocks, white can squeeze over here. Black has to connect here, and white has a Sente, right? So white does not need to fix over here. So black spent a move to fix his shape, but it's a move. What if black can, get Sente, but in the meantime, make his shape perfect on the outside? That's where our brilliant idea of sacrifice come in once again. That is for us to squeeze over here. So this looks like a very weird move. Like we are dying, but but instead we decide just to commit suicide completely. And that's the power of sacrifice. Now we can see that white has to go back and capture, because if white plays here, we can block. If white Ataris, we can Atari. So now not only we got the d5 fix, but we also got the b3 block, which is a lot of points. And in the meantime, we have a Sente. So that's a terrible result for white. The correct move is for white to just capture 2 stones. And now when we Atari, white has to capture. And we were able to get this fix in Sente without this annoying stone that white used to have at b3. So now we got a Sente, and then we prevented to a maximum this endgame loss for us. So if you look at the comparison, if we just connect, white can fix with b3. Now we have a tough choice. We can block, get a Gote, or we can Tanuki and get a Sente, but the cost is very, very serious, because now white can extend and we have to block, and then white can Hane connect, and white just never has to go back and fix any problems here. So white was able to gain all these points, and we lost all these points. That's a very big endgame loss for black. So remember the sacrifice idea, right? Instead of blocking outside directly, we should sacrifice one more stone, right? This is a very classical sequence for black. All right, so today we talked about a lot of concrete ideas, a lot of, I guess, concrete moves that we can play, but they all follow the same idea, is that when we have one dead stone, sometimes with, obviously this has to be backed by reading, but if you read it out and you realize it works, a lot of times we should think about sacrifice. A lot of times we should think about making one dead stone into 2 dead stones, or even 3 dead stones. And then we are able to extend this dead group's liberty to take advantage of it and then gain profits on the outside. So our dead stone, it's dead, and it has no ways to escape, but we can make use of it by sacrificing a little bit more, and we feed a little bit more to our opponent, but we are able to gain more profits back on the outside. Very important idea in sacrifice. It's probably the most important idea in sacrifice, and we have seen 4 examples of that in today's video. So I hope you guys enjoyed this lecture, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you don't want to miss out on future videos like this. We are going to have more interesting and more complex ideas for sacrificing, and I will see you guys next time.